last episode of Monday Night Raw, which aired yesterday, although it is actually after midnight, so it is now 2 days ago. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right into it. I would like to say we did actually jump from 2 subscribers to 4 over the weekend, so thank you guys so much for that. But yeah, let's get going with the show. So, the first segment is a Brock Lesnar promo. Well, I say that because Brock Lesnar was in the ring, but he didn't say a single word the entire time, which I guess is standard. That Paul Heyman speaks for him, but yeah, he didn't even say a single thing on this episode. Him and Paul Heyman come out with some police officers that turned out to be obviously fake police officers, but even in kayfabe they were fake. Paul was just bringing them out to mess with Oba, but they're out with their police officers. And Paul basically is saying that Oba is dumb because he threw away a title shot to wrestle Brock Lesnar instead of going for a world title, which he had the right to because he is the king of the ring. King of the ring, king of the ring. He tells Oba that he got a restraining order because he wanted to protect the SummerSlam match. But this does not stop Oba. He comes out anyway. Apologies for the furnace turning on. It should go off in a couple seconds. But yeah, so Oba comes out. Paul and Brock are hiding behind their line of like 5 police officers, and Paul is telling him that he violated the restraining order, so the police officers approach Oba, and obviously he just squashes them all. He takes them all out, and then he even takes the 5th guy and does his signature like toss and throws him out from the ring, out onto the floor on top of the 4 other guys, which was pretty cool. But yeah, so as he's beating up these cops, Paul and Brock have already gone up the entrance ramp. They're out, and Oba gets the mic as they're gone, and he's saying, you're running away from me. You've hit me with low blows. This isn't the Beast, right? You're not being the Beast incarnate. You're being a coward, is basically what he's saying. And he's telling him that come SummerSlam, he won't be able to run because obviously the SummerSlam match is inside the Hell in a Cell. So, that is the promo. It was a decent promo. I think Oba's making a lot of sense. Yeah, Paul didn't really say much, but I think Oba was making some good points, so we'll move on. The first match of the night is Io Sky versus Roxanne Perez. Obviously, Io Sky has a title match at SummerSlam with Liv, so it makes sense she's going to have a match with the underlings of the faction. I feel like Roxanne, she kind of needs more stuff to do. She's called the Prodigy, like that's her kind of billing, that's her nickname. So obviously in NXT she must have had some more potential than what she's doing now, which is just being the 3rd woman in a faction. But yeah, like if she was really the Prodigy, I would like to see her kind of reach some of that potential a little bit faster. But yeah, as for the match, they're still going with the story of Io having her leg not be 100%. Okay, the furnace finally stopped. But yeah, so they're going with the story of Io's leg not being 100%. But yet every single week they're having Io wrestle, so it doesn't make a ton of sense. Every single title match or important match at SummerSlam, they're trying to protect the match, right? But yet Io gets, harassed and assaulted every week, and her leg stomped on every week, and she's still good enough to wrestle, but then sells the injury. So a little bit maybe inconsistent there. But for the finish, Liv and Raquel are distracting Io, and Roxanne goes to roll her up for a pin, like the belly to back, like back roll pin, but then Io like rolls through it, and then she actually gets the quick 1, 2, 3, and Io ends up winning the match through a quick pin, a roll up. But obviously that does not work for the Judgment Day. So the three women of the Judgment Day just assault Io after the match. Sol Ruka actually ends up coming out to try and help, but it's not effective, I guess you would say. She gets beat up by Raquel, and they continue to assault Io anyway. And the Judgment Day, stand tall. During that brawl segment, Liv did slap Io, and it seemed pretty stiff. It seemed like she actually just slapped her. I didn't see her do the smacking the leg thing, so it really seemed like the sound was just from Liv smacking Io on the face. So I'm not sure what that means, if that's a normal thing or not, but I noticed that. Thought it was worth mentioning. So the next segment is a Vision promo. The Vision come out. It is Braun Breaker, Logan Paul, Austin Theory, and now, of course, Maxine Dupri. And the goal of why they're out there in the ring is obviously they just won the tag championships last week, won them back from the Street Profits, so they're kind of doing their celebration thing, and then also introducing Maxine as an official part of the Vision. But shortly as they're starting that, Otis and Tozawa come out, who were her old faction, the Alpha Academy. And now the Vision is just laughing at them, but Maxine is visibly kind of upset by this. So you're thinking oh, well, they are still her friends, so she doesn't like to see them just getting humiliated by the Vision, right? Tozawa actually gets on the mic and is saying that this is not her, this is not the Maxine that they know, and that Austin Theory is not the right guy for her. And then as Maxine is trying to get a word in, she's getting pretty good heat. The crowd is definitely booing her to the point that she doesn't feel like she can talk over it and be heard. I don't think this will last. It's kind of like the Fatal Influence debut heat, where they come out and they assaulted Paige, and they got a ton of heat because Paige just came back. But then as the weeks go on, the heat kind of dies out. Still getting booed, but not. It's probably never going to be at this level again. But sorry. So she's trying to speak. She can't really get a word in. As Otis and Tozawa are kind of saying that Theory is bad for Maxine. He's eating it up. He's smiling. He's laughing. The mic. He doesn't have a mic, but on the hot mic, he's saying. So he's saying, "Oh, man, I'm a bad boy." He's just eating it up, and I think he's doing really good, character work right there. It was entertaining to see him just be that cocky heel. But as the segment progresses, Otis actually ends up hinting to Maxine that he had a crush on her the entire time. But before he actually says the words, Theory interrupts him and is just laughing at him and saying that he's delusional, and is just saying, look at you and then look at me, right? And he's being, vain and, cocky, like I was saying. And then, as the crowd is booing him, he says they're booing me because they're just like you, insulting the crowd. And he's saying they're a bunch of losers, right? And he says that people like Otis don't end up with people like Maxine. So kind of just attacking his appearance and then going at the crowd, which was pretty fun, And then as Theory is insulting Otis, he kind of snaps and he attacks Theory. But then Braun comes in and, Braun and Theory are able to take care of Otis and Tozawa. Speaking of Tozawa, Braun Breaker does this suplex type move on Tozawa while they're on the outside. And he's supposed to land on the announce table, but Tozawa is so small and so slight that when Braun does the move, he throws him over the announce table and Tozawa just lands on the floor. Which was kind of funny. But in the end, Otis actually comes back and 2v1s them to the point where Maxine has to step in and kind of plead to Otis not to hurt Theory, right? And then she even goes to lean in for a kiss from Otis, but then Theory low blows him right before, anything happens. And then Maxine, her face switches and she reveals that it was actually just a play to set up this, the comeback. And Tozawa ends up getting speared by Braun, and then Theory holds Otis. Oh, well, first he actually hits Otis with the brass knuckles that Maxine gave him, but then he holds Otis up, and Braun does the, goes back and forth 4 times and hits him with his, his torpedo spear, whatever you want to call it. So, the crowd was surprisingly into this segment, considering it had the Alpha Academy, had Maxine, Tozawa, and Otis on the segment who hadn't been on TV much recently. But the crowd was really getting into it. I feel like Theory came into his own and came into his character a lot more in this segment. He was he looked like he was having fun, and he had me laughing. I know what he was saying wasn't funny, but just the way that he was kind of swaggering about was you could tell he was having fun. And I feel like he was doing good heel work not for the first time, but pretty much. This was a new kind of side of his character instead of just being, the bald, stern guy. He was playing a new sort of character that I could have more fun with. Maxine, for me, is kind of whatever. Okay, so I just remembered that my mic was not in stereo. So, apologies for that. I think I'm just gonna leave it. It's 12:41. I do need to go to bed. So I'm gonna just leave it as it is. Apologies. Let's move on past that. Now you can hear me in your right ear and your left ear. So let's continue with that setup. So Maxine is kind of whatever for me in the Vision, but I really do like the Vision. I already liked Braun and I liked Logan. Logan in WWE, obviously. Outside of that, he's not a great person. And then Theory really showed me something that he hadn't shown me in the past, and I think he has potential now too. So we'll see what happens with them. And then they goes to commercial after this segment, and somehow we come back to commercial, and there's a match going on between Royce Keys and Jimmy Uso. So having that start during commercial is kind of crazy. A. B. How is Jimmy wrestling so many singles matches on TV? Like, how is this happening? And then C. I wrote that Royce is obviously going over, considering he lost on SmackDown, which is kind of crazy to have someone like Royce Keys, who's new and who was getting pushed, just lose to Jimmy Uso on SmackDown, which is wild. However, I mean, I guess you could say he goes over because he does technically win the match, but he wins by disqualification because Jacob Fatu actually interrupts the match. And I'm not really sure I understand the story behind why Fatu would do this. So, Jacob and Royce are friends. That's been established. Jacob in this segment is, while he's beating up Royce, is saying that he doesn't want to do this. Royce is wrestling Jimmy Uso, Big Jim, who Jacob has stated week after week that he has no allegiance to. His only allegiance is to the OTC. He has never said anything about the Usos. He's never followed any of the Usos' orders or anything. So why is this happening? He only follows the orders of Roman. He's friends with Royce. He's telling Royce that he doesn't want to beat him up as he's doing it. So, just because Royce is getting involved in family business, that's not really what Jacob cares about. Jacob would only do this if Roman told him to do this, which is never hinted at ever. So, that just didn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like it just didn't follow the story that they're telling. But they do it so that Solo can come in and stop Jacob from attacking Keys. And then Solo tells Jacob to leave him alone and says that he will acknowledge the bloodline, and he does the little bloodline salute. And as he's doing this, the crowd kind of has the same reaction that I'm having. I don't really understand if the bloodline is supposed to be a face faction or a heel faction. Roman obviously is cheered, and he's the head of the faction, but he says like heel type things, like telling people to acknowledge him is a heel thing, like he's putting himself above other people, right? And then Jacob was also kind of a tweener kind of character, and then Solo was obviously just a heel. So then when Solo is aligning with Roman's faction, the crowd doesn't really know what to do, if they should boo him or cheer him, and I don't really know either. I mean, I know Roman is face, but I think, is he only face because people like him? Like Dominic Mysterio, for example, people chant for him, but he's a heel. So it's like, is that what's going on, or is he actually, or are they actually face? Because then what ends up happening is LA Knight comes out with a chair, and then LA, Royce Keys, and Solo are standing tall in the ring, and LA makes the match of him, Solo Sikoa, and Royce Keys against the Fatu and the Usos for SummerSlam, a 6-man tag. And LA Knight is obviously a face, and Royce Keys is obviously a face, so now I guess this is like a face turn from Solo. So, if Solo's face turn is turning against the bloodline, does that mean the bloodline are supposed to be heel, but Roman is the head of the bloodline and he's face? So that's kind of what I mean. I'm not sure what's supposed to be going on. And I don't think that's good for the top guy of the company to be involved in something that I don't know what's going on. Obviously, I didn't watch this at the time, but back when the first run of the bloodline, they were very clearly heel, right? And so I think that's kind of what they're doing. But Roman turned face, so it's just kind of weird. I don't know if the synergy is there. Yeah, I don't know if everything's going in the same direction. But Either way, so that's going to be a match. And LA Knight just keeps getting put in these, like, group faction conflict situations where he's not challenging for titles because he's in a 3v3 match at WrestleMania against the Vision. Now he's in a 3v3 match at SummerSlam against the Bloodline. So he's just stuck. He's perpetually stuck. Then we have a pretty weird segment where the Vision are backstage. And they face Paul Heyman. And he seems happy. But then he like walks out on them, and the angle is like he's jealous of Maxine. Like, it was weird. He's like, she did such a good job. Like, seems like you don't need me anymore, or like something like that. And he walks off. So it's like what? She's not a manager. She's supposed to be a wrestler. She is a former women's intercontinental champion. She can't replace Heyman. Like, so that it was just very weird. Also, he shouldn't have been happy in the first place, because all they did was beat up the Alpha Academy. Like, how was that supposed to make Paul Heyman happy? So, I don't know. The whole segment kind of missed for me. Speaking of segments that miss for me, we have the Bayley and Lyra segment. Lyra comes out. She looks a little, like, over the top, kind of messed up. She looks like she came right out of, like, Coraline or something. She got, like, ripped, just sewed. Like, I don't know, like, just a one big giant shirt that's, like, got sewing and rips in it. And I think it's, like, almost a little too much, a little too on the nose, a little too over the top. But, I mean, I guess, hey, they gotta sell the character change that they're trying to pull off here. And basically, Lyra just says Bayley isn't as good as she thinks she is, and she needs to stop focusing on her past friendships failing and living in the past. And then Bayley just says, I'm a former world champion, I'm a Grand Slam champion, and, I'm gonna beat you at Saturday Night Main Event. And that's kind of it. And then they brawl. And then Lyra ends up standing tall. So, we'll see. We'll see if she gets a new theme song. We'll see what they're gonna do. But yeah, not super interested in that future match, unfortunately. Okay, there are only 2 segments left, but they are big ones. We have the Intercontinental Championship #1 contender gauntlet match. So it starts with Joe Hendry and Dominic Mysterio. During this portion of the match, so Dom goes for a tornado DDT on Hendry, and Hendry stopped the momentum from the DDT, and then lifted up Dom and suplexed him, all without Dom ever touching the ground, which I just thought was pretty impressive feat of strength from him. But in the end, JD just gets up on the apron, and then Joe Hendry's distracted, and then he gets hit with a 619 and a frog splash, and he gets pinned. So not a great look for Joe. But he got distracted, so it's supposed to be a protected loss, but we'll see. Then Javon Evans is the next participant of the gauntlet match to come out, and he hits his full entrance. He comes out and he does that thing he does where he looks in the camera and stuff, and they cut to commercial right as his entrance is starting. So I understand that that's why they had him do a full entrance so they could go to commercial. But in kayfabe, it's why wouldn't you want to get to the ring as soon as possible, since Dom just wrestled a match? If you were really trying to win, you wouldn't hit your whole entrance. You would go straight to the ring, all business, right? But they need to cut to commercial, so they have him do something that doesn't make sense. Anyway, they try and do the same finish with JD distracting him, right? But, and it actually works. He does hit Javon with the 619, but as he's on the top turnbuckle for the frog splash, Danhausen's music hits and he comes out. And he actually does the curse thing to Dom, but the pyro shoots on the wrong ring post, so they're doing a little, Danhausen, a little comedy thing, but it works out anyway because he didn't get hit with the pyro, but he was still distracted, so Javon is able to capitalize on that, and he hits the OG cutter, and he actually pins Dom with the OG cutter. So the next person in is Dragon Lee. Some fun stuff in this portion. Javon dives on Dragon Lee. Dragon Lee's in the timekeeper area, and Javon dives on him and ends up in the front row of the crowd, which is always fun when the wrestlers end up in the crowd. Dragon Lee had a botch on a tornado DDT. Tornado DDT. He just missed the rope with his foot and then just did it again. Which is what the wrestlers do now when they botch. They just hit the same spot again anyway. But I will say, Javon at least sold it really well when he actually got it the second time. He jumped, landed flat, not on his head because his arm is there, but makes it look like he landed flat on his head and flipped over through it. He's really good at selling. He does the same kind of sell on Penta's Destroyer, and it looks really good. Dragon Lee ends up losing as he sets up the Styles Clash, and then Javon does the same counter that Sami Zayn does, where he kind of puts his feet up and rolls up. Dragon Lee for the roll-up pin. And this is actually the second time now, I don't know if it's back-to-back weeks or 2 times in the last 3 weeks, that Dragon Lee has lost while setting up the Styles Clash. He lost to Ethan Page while he was had Ethan Page set up for it, and now he just lost to Javon. So I don't know if that's just what they came up with again, or if maybe they're gonna have him stop using the Styles Clash because he only did that while he was tagging with AJ, and to kind of respect that. But now he's kind of done with it. We'll see. But next is Rusev. Rusev comes out, and instead of coming down the entrance ramp, he sneaks behind Javon, and it starts with the upper hand in this portion of the match. Basically the finish, Javon gets put in the accolade twice, but is able to get out. But then he finally gets his chance to go for the OG cutter, but Rusev kind of dodges it, and then puts him in the accolade for a third time, where he has to tap, but he doesn't actually tap. He passes out, but he loses the match. So then Gable comes in. Nothing super special with this portion. Gable basically gets out of an accolade, hits a German suplex in the corner, where Rusev's back of his head hits the top turnbuckle off a German suplex, and then Gable basically just rolls him up and pins him. And so the final leg of this match is Chad Gable versus Ethan Page. Rusev, after getting pinned by Gable, he got rolled up, so he's not out of it. So he ends up attacking Gable and putting him in the accolade again after losing the match. So Page comes in with a pretty big head start, right? Page hits this move. It was a half code breaker. He, puts the knee to the face, but only one knee. And then Michael Cole called it the confidence breaker. And I've never seen Ethan Page use that move before. I don't know if that's a new signature that he has, or if that's an old signature that he's bringing back, or if a one-legged code breaker is just called a confidence breaker. when Chad Gable does the ankle slam, he doesn't have a name for it, so they call it the ankle slam. I don't know if it's like that kind of situation, but I've never heard of the confidence breaker before, so maybe a new signature for Ethan Page. But basically, he ends up just tapping to the ankle lock. So Chad Gable is going on to face Penta at SummerSlam. Penta shows up in the ring after he wins the match, and they shake hands because they're two faces going for a title, so that's what you do. I feel like Penta hasn't been on TV much in recent weeks. He hasn't been doing much, I know for a fact. He's showed up on TV, like, in backstage segments and said a couple sentences, but he hasn't done really much of anything recently. So, maybe that's a hint that Gable is gonna go over, but we'll have to wait and see. Gable also he's trying to do these claps for his new entrance theme, and he's just doing it off beat. And the crowd got all messed up, and it sounded really bad. Everyone's clapping at random times because they're trying to do it on the beat. Some people are trying to do it on the beat of the music, and some people are following Gable, and Gable evidently can't find the beat. So it was kind of a mess. He's got to figure that one out. And then something I wanted to note, as they're showing this video package for CM Punk vs. Cody, I just felt like it was worth noting that from WrestleMania to SummerSlam, the two biggest shows of the year, for the two main events, those world title matches, 3 of the 4 participants are the same exact people a couple months later. I just absolutely assaulted the mic. Apologies for that. I'll have to edit that one out. But you have Punk. Roman was for the world title. And then Rhodes and Randy Orton was for the WWE title at WrestleMania. Now you have Punk versus Rhodes for the WWE title at SummerSlam. And you have Roman versus Rollins as the main event for SummerSlam as well for the world title. So the only one who's not in the same exact position as they were a couple months ago is Randy Orton, who hasn't been seen, who's probably injured. So I feel like that's worth noting. That's probably not the best case scenario. I'm sure some people will look at that and be like, oh, it's getting stale. So interesting to see what happens next. So now we get to the main event segment, which is the Roman Reigns Seth Rollins contract signing. There was a production botch on Roman's entrance, and the camera just completely missed the second round of his pyro. But actually, I think it was on the pyro guy and not the camera guy, because Roman has two instances of pyro in his entrance. When he's on the entrance ramp, he does the thing, he gets pyro. He then faces the crowd that's his back to the camera, that crowd, and he points and there's no pyro, and then he gets in the ring and he raises his title facing the camera, and that's when the second pyro hits. That's how it usually goes. But this week, when he does the one, not facing the camera, the second pyro goes off, so the camera crew doesn't switch to the right camera because they weren't expecting the pyro to go off, is what I imagine happened. But to the actual segment, Seth starts out hot, he's saying, some things are certain, death, taxes, and Seth Rollins beating Roman Reigns every time. And, he's feeling good about himself. He kicks his feet up on the table and he's smiling because the crowd is chanting, doing the whoa chant for him. So, he's feeling good. He's got a smile on his face. Roman comes out and he's saying that Seth put everyone to sleep last week like me, trying to put you to sleep right now. He says that Seth is the tribal chief's #1 hater, and that is the only thing that Seth is actually #1 at. He said that Seth was somehow able to confuse the crowd and the people to think that they were on the same level. But at SummerSlam, he will show out, the difference between their levels. Something I noted, was that the crowd is actually chanting Roman throughout his promo. And that kind of surprised me, because obviously Roman is, the #1 beloved guy. But it seemed like this crowd was actually cheering more for Seth. Not that Roman wasn't getting cheered, but they were chanting Roman and cheering Seth pretty hard. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Seth hits him with a pretty decent line. He's like, "Thank you for keeping my title warm. I'm gonna get it back at SummerSlam, and then I'll see you the next time you decide you want to show up for work." And he walks out, and the crowd gets a pretty good reaction, and it was a pretty good line. But he's walking away, and Roman is like, "That's it. You're just gonna leave after that." So Roman starts going into his promo, and he's like, let's play your game. Let's say you actually do win the title. What are you gonna do with it? Vacate it in a couple months once you're injured again? And then the crowd really pops off for that. And then he doubles down on it, and he's like, that's what happens every time. He says that Seth is self-sabotaging because he cannot handle the burden or the pressure of being the top guy and trying to fill Roman's shoes. Roman continues saying he knows Seth is still a #2 guy because after all these years, he still needs a Money in the Bank briefcase to win a world title, and he even had to fake an injury to cash it in and get the title. And then he is breaking the fourth wall a little bit, saying if there was ever a time for Seth to be #1, it would have been now, because he's best buds with Triple H, who's running everything. Which I was, whenever Triple H gets brought up, it's pretty interesting, pretty surprising that they would go there, right? He says that they have given him all of the opportunities that Roman had, and he couldn't fill Roman's shoes. Basically saying he got a world title, Seth got the vision for Roman's bloodline, Seth got the world title, and nothing really came of it. And he finishes with his line saying, "You're #2 and you're always going to be #2. I'm #1 and I'm always going to be #1. So just acknowledge it. B word." He hits him with the B word and the crowd goes crazy. So Seth has to respond. He can't just hold that. It's a pretty big L to just hold. So he says he knows he will never be as big of a star as Roman. He will never draw as much money as Roman. He will never main event as many WrestleManias as Roman. But he says that they aren't running the same race. He's proud of what he fights for, and he's glad that he's Seth freaking Rollins, the revolutionary, the visionary, and he is glad that he is not Roman Reigns. And Roman kind of makes a face he's saying this like you don't believe, he doesn't believe Seth, and I actually agree. This segment would have been better if Seth actually said anything about who he is or what he fights for, instead of just saying he's proud of who he is and he knows what he fights for. He never actually named it, right? As far as we know, has said that Roman is living his dream. So from what he said, there's no reason why he wouldn't wish he was Roman Reigns. So I feel like his response didn't really hit because he never really elaborated. He just kind of said that he was the visionary, the revolutionary. He was Seth freaking Rollins, and he's happy with who he is. Which, like, fair enough, but obviously, it's just like, obviously you would rather have had Roman's career like that. You needed to say something. Like, last week he was saying that Roman was in it for the money and he's in it for wrestling and he loves the business. Like, he should have re-referenced that. But, I mean, we know that Seth's dream was to be the top guy like Roman. So for him to just say that he's happy he was not Roman Reigns, it was hard to believe. But either way, the segment ends with a pedigree into a stomp, and Seth actually stands tall for this one. So, we'll see what happens. Like I said, I don't know if I see Roman losing. I don't know if they're gonna continue to run with the narrative that Seth beats Roman Reigns when the stakes are high. I feel like Roman has enough creative control that he's like, there's not going to be anyone that has an unblemished record against me, right? But we'll see. Yeah, so this show, it was pretty good, I would say. The Roman promo was pretty good. Or even just pretty good. I think it was good. It was entertaining. The Vision segment with the Alpha Academy was entertaining. Brock Lesnar was here. Oba was here, But yeah, I would say it was a pretty good show. And I think there's a lot of potential for SummerSlam. There's not a lot of made matches for SummerSlam yet. It's getting pretty close, so I feel like there's going to be a wave of matches that just get made pretty quickly. For a 2-night event, I feel like there's still not that many matches left. There's women's title, the 2 world titles, and the IC title, and then the 6-man tag, so that's 5. So they need like another 5 more. They need like double the matches that they have. Or maybe even more, like maybe it'll be 6 and 6. I don't remember if Mania was 6 and 6 or 5 and 5, but they need at least to double their matches. But yeah, so apologies for missing the SmackDown review. I was not here. I was not home, and it's already Tuesday, so it doesn't make sense to make a SmackDown review. Nothing really crazy happened at SmackDown anyway, besides the match being made of Punk and Cody. So yeah, I mean, SmackDown wasn't a huge miss. Baron Corbin came back, but I didn't watch WWE and Baron Corbin was in it, so that return doesn't really do anything for me personally, so I don't think I would have been the best person to react and review that anyway. So, yeah. Sorry I missed SmackDown review. We'll get it this week. Saturday night's main event is this Saturday, so I look forward to that. I'm not sure if I'm gonna do a prediction video. I feel like I might only do that for the actual PLEs, but I might do a prediction video for Saturday night's main event. But yeah, other than that, thank you guys for spending your time with me. I hope you have a great night, and a great day, because this is getting posted very late, so more than likely you'll see it in the morning.